Noita is a hard game, and given that it took me a whopping 198 attempts to beat the final boss for the first time, the next logical step is, of course, trying to complete a run without killing any enemies. Yep, that's right, I'm attempting a pacifist challenge, with the pacifist part in big quotation marks as I came to find out, but more on that later. First, the rules. I'm not allowed to kill any enemies using direct damage spells. If I manage to make it through a biome without doing that, I'll be rewarded with a pacifist chest, which is also how I know whether I accidentally killed something. Accidents, however, are allowed. Kicking a rock into someone or a hydrant exploding next to an enemy don't count as player kills. Of course, there are still ways to accidentally kill enemies with spells and get away with it, as you'll see later, but you get the gist. Don't kill things, get chest. Mind you, I haven't beaten the game again since that first victory, and I still haven't looked up any wikis or guides. The only place I get tips from is your comments on my videos, so saying this is going to be hard might just be the understatement of the century. And that was perfectly reflected in my first few attempts, which were absolute garbage, like impressively bad. Turns out not killing things in Noita is kind of hard when literally everything wants you dead. And I'm not just talking about the enemies, no, even the world itself wants to see you suffer. Now you might be thinking, oh gee, well I bet he must have a really good strategy then. And to that I say, no. My game plan is as simple as it gets. Avoid every enemy and get as many wands as possible on the way down. Not because I'm hoping for some overpowered screen annihilating spell like usual, but because I need every bit of utility I can get my hands on. I'm especially hoping to find a teleport bolt to get out of sticky situations and a decent drilling wand. So to wrap up my first few attempts, they were painful and short. And I mean short, like most of the runs only lasted like 2 minutes short. And on some attempts I straight up forgot I was doing a pacifist run. That happened. I did manage to find a few useful spells on some occasions though, but despite that I still couldn't make it very far. It wasn't until my 21st attempt that I finally saw some success, all thanks to an old friend that was waiting for me in the very first holy mountain. The invisibility perk, one of my all-time favorites, and as if that wasn't enough, the pacifist chest even contained a decent drilling wand. With that combo I managed to get all the way to the very last biome before killing myself with a black hole. Which I ain't even mad about, it's a very Noita way to die. After that the next few runs were less impressive. I tried to mix up my strategy here and there, like using a teleport potion whenever I was in trouble and just let Jesus take the wheel on where I land. Which by the way, to no one's surprise, did not end up well. And I was starting to wonder if I could ever manage to make my way to the boss. But then came attempt number 31. And that's when things finally started to click. The run started out pretty average, and as you can probably tell from my reckless attempts at snagging some free gold, I was already feeling burnt out and seriously questioning whether I even wanted to keep going with this challenge. But I kept pushing, and in the first holy mountain I picked up the extra perk passive and bought myself a teleport bolt and a luminous drill. 2 spells I'd end up using all the way to the end of the run. And ironically I wouldn't have been able to afford either of them if it weren't for my greed for gold earlier. The moral of the story? Greed always pays off, or something like that. Anyways, I leave the holy mountain without collapsing it and then basically just teleport my way through the next biome while picking up everything I can get my hands on. Back in the holy mountain I found the unlimited spells perk and got rewarded with some gold from the pacifist chest. Finding this particular perk was huge, since that meant I only needed to find a black hole spell and I would be able to drill all the way down to the boss without any problems. But for now I have to work with what I've got. So I removed all of the acid blobs from the wand I just picked up and made myself a rather sad drilling wand with the luminous drill. So moving forward, my top priority shifted from just somehow making it through a biome to actively going out of my way to find better spells. And as luck would have it, I found a new wand right after jumping down into the snowy depths. It just wasn't what I've been hoping for. I then went on to find some free gold laying around, but then quickly remembered that I was still playing Noita and nothing in this game is for free. And it was here that I noticed my alarmingly low health bar. Turns out I completely forgot to refill my HP at the holy mountain. So back we go. After healing back up, I managed to get to the exit of the biome without much trouble, but unfortunately also without any additional wands. Ironically, the pacifist chest did drop a wand, but it was loaded with dynamite sticks, which I really didn't want to use in this run. The passive I chose this time was the perk lottery, which provides a 50% chance of perks not disappearing after picking them up. I always go for this one if I have the opportunity, because Duh, gambling is fun. Just kidding, don't be like me and waste all your money on trading cards hoping to get a big hit. Anyways, I tinkered a bit with my wands, making them a bit more efficient, healed myself back up and then left without buying any of the spells. Next up was the Heezy base, aka the biome where dreams go to die. My goal was simple: get in, scream internally for the entire time, get out. So I picked up the wand I found at the entrance and made a run for it. While teleporting through the tight corridors filled to the brim with enemies and explosive hydrants, I more than once thought I would get stuck and end my run here and there. But as it turned out, luck was on my side because it seemed like I somehow found the perfect route through the biome, because I cannot remember the last time I managed to find the exit this quickly. So after snagging some gold from the chest, I picked up the projectile repulsion field perk and spent some time debating whether any of the spells here were worth using. I eventually decided to save my gold and moved on to the underground jungle, a biome with wide open spaces where I could teleport around to my heart's content. So since I no longer have to fear getting stuck between random pixels next to a wall, I continued with my plan and began searching for wands again. On my way through the biome, I ran into several groups of enemies and took a bit of damage, but my teleport wand kept me slippery enough to escape most trouble. And then I found it. The spell that would change the course of this run entirely and push the definition of pacifism to its absolute limit: rock. But at this point I didn't know about that and simply picked up the wand and continued, just to instantly eat one of those weird glitter bombs. And then this happened. I don't know why, how, or why, but for some reason my teleportation wand now shoots fireballs. It happened so suddenly I didn't even realize what happened, and before I knew it the enemy was dead. So that's it? Did I seriously just lose the run right here? Only one way to find out. After this shock I just wanted to find out whether the run was over or not. So I ignored everything else and just went straight for the portal. And thank God I still got the Pacifist chest. I don't know how that didn't count as a kill, but hey, I'm not gonna question it. If Noita wants to throw me a bone for once, I'll gladly take it. The perks from which I could choose this time were rather useless in my opinion, so I decided to reroll them and picked up the fire immunity and extra life perk for myself. And as I browsed through my inventory, I realized what I had. I had rock. And a projectile repulsion field which would propel rock for me, which is an interaction I found out about in my previous Noita video. Go watch that after this one if you haven't already, by the way. Combine that with the fact that kills with rocks don't count as player kills, and we got ourselves a brand new way of spreading pacifism. So after a bit of tinkering and finding the best combinations of spells and wands, I made my way into the vault. Right at the start I found an ambrosia potion, which in theory is amazing since it grants invincibility, but in practice it always felt kind of janky to me. Trying to awkwardly drench yourself mid-fight, and drinking it only causes you to vomit. So it's a nice to have thing, but nothing I would bet my run on. Not to say that I didn't try to get some of that invincibility on my robe. I then awkwardly tried to blast my way through some crates into a room filled with enemies, but ended up just clogging the drain instead. So I turned around and went the other way, where I encountered my first enemy. I took aim and boom, delivered a huge chunk of pacifism straight into his face. And I cannot tell you how good that felt. Finally being able to fight back after so many biomes of just running away. And it's not that I just fight back, I completely obliterate every enemy in sight. Because as it turns out, getting hit by a huge boulder coming at you at breakneck speeds really does break your neck. But Noita being Noita, it of course didn't let me enjoy my power fantasy for long, before overwhelming me with a ton of enemies and forcing me to once again whip out my trusty teleportation wand and run for my life. It wasn't easy and I took a good amount of damage in the process, but I still made it to the next holy mountain in one piece. And to be honest, even with me knowing that my rocks wouldn't count as player kills, I still was relieved seeing the Pacifist chest in here. You know, because sucks if I were wrong. But I wasn't, and what's far more important right now, the chest dropped a wand with 3 more rock spells, upping my pacifism output significantly. I rerolled the available perks and picked up the repulsion field, making me even more powerful, along with tinker with wands everywhere, because last time I skipped it, you guys definitely made sure I knew that was a mistake. I also grabbed faster wands and then rerolled once more, hoping it would refresh all the perks. It didn't, just the one, which I of course also picked up. 4 perks in one holy mountain, told ya gambling pays off. I then tinkered a bit with my wands and entered the Temple of the Art, where I immediately had to spread some pacifism. As you can probably tell, at this point most projectiles can't even touch me thanks to my perks. But since I didn't pick up any melee immunity, the biggest threat in this biome are these little skull flies, which can be annoying, but they are luckily also the enemies that die the fastest. Okay, who am I kidding? Everything that's getting hit by my rocks dies pretty much instantly. I mean, I had normal runs where I didn't manage to get a wand this powerful, and now you're telling me I'm allowed to insta-kill every enemy on a pacifist run? That's wild. But it's not like I was just leisurely strolling through the biome either. I took a fair amount of damage from melee attacks, traps, toxic clouds, and even just from running through those shadow guys. Unfortunately, thanks to their ghostly nature, they're immune to my rocks, so all I could do was ignore them. And after a few minutes and over 9k gold later, I managed to find the final portal. But then, as I was making my way through the Holy Mountain to pick up the Pacifist reward, I noticed that it was missing. Did I somehow kill an enemy in a way I wasn't supposed to? No, it can't be. I did the same thing in the previous biome and still got the chest there. Was everything I did to get here for nothing? I just needed to know. So I broke my own rule of not looking things up and asked ChatGPT. And to my delight, it said that the very last Holy Mountain never contains a Pacifist chest. I really thought for a second there that I had to start all over again. After recovering from this heart attack, I then proceeded to pick up the bomb's materialized perk, which lets me put explosive spells into my inventory and move on to face Call Me. Or let's say I just awkwardly stood there watching him tinker with his gear thing while I contemplated if this was really the way a Pacifist run is supposed to end. Because up until now, all I thought about was to somehow make it to the boss without killing anything. I hadn't even considered what I was going to do once I reached him. But now that I'm here, it kinda feels wrong to go the entire game without killing anything just to then kill Call Me. Apart from this, I'm not even sure if my current loadout would be strong enough to kill him. So I once again decided to look things up. Yeah, I know, but I value my time too much to just throw everything out the window because I didn't do an ultra specific thing. Because who knows, the next time I might get another shot could be in 40 or even more runs. And holy shit, I'm so glad I looked up how to do a proper Pacifist run, because there's no way I would have figured all of this out on my own. First, I have to dig through a ton of extremely dense rock, then somehow make it through the lava lake, which is then followed by a brickwork structure. Why all that? Well, it turns out that the final room, the one you get teleported to after defeating the boss, is just chilling somewhere in the world. Once I find that room, I then have to head back to Call Me, grab his little toy and make a run for it, where I can then complete the work without actually killing Call Me himself. Okay, so now that I have a plan, it's time to address the elephant in the room. How the hell am I supposed to get through the lava lake without ending up like a pizza you forgot in the oven because you passed out drunk on the couch? I know that water and ice will turn lava into stone if they make contact, but since I was so focused on just making it here, I only picked up spells and wands that I thought would help me survive. And the wands back in the Holy Mountain didn't seem to have any useful spells attached to them either. Luckily, I already had my drilling wand, which could chew through just about anything. I bought one of the available wands, removed every spell from it except the earthquake, made my rock thrower even better, and began making my way the only direction that made sense. Up. I don't know what I'm looking for specifically, but since I only focused on spells that helped me survive on my way down, there's a good chance that in one of the previous biomes or holy mountains, there's something somewhere that could solve my problem. But first, I had to dig myself through, well, who knows how much rock to just even get there. And as you can see, even though my wand was technically doing its job, the process was incredibly slow and painfully tedious. After 10 minutes of non-stop digging, I finally made it back to the Temple of Art for round 2, which pretty much was the same as round 1, with the only difference being that I now explored a little more. I also found this giant glowing triangle, but honestly I couldn't deal with this shit right now, so I decided to just leave it alone. After exploring the temple for some time and killing what felt like half of the population of the biome and not finding anything remotely useful, I decided that it was time to visit the Holy Mountain again. The ones here might not be what I was looking for, but there was one with some healing bolts attached to it, so I made sure to pick it up. I didn't manage to actually heal myself just yet, since I would need to somehow shoot myself with the spell, but maybe I will find something in the next biome, or rather previous biome. You guessed it, it's time for another drilling session. 5 minutes later, I arrived at the laboratory and instantly had to pacify some enemies. Just look at the amount of rocks laying around. Glorious. After some time exploring, I found the very first wand, and while it didn't solve my lava problem, it did solve another one. I'm of course talking about my rocks not flying at the speed of light. That's right guys, I now have extremely fast homing rocks, which sounds like the perfect recipe to kill myself, but luckily I don't take any damage from them. I continued my way through the laboratory, killing every enemy in sight, and also those who were not inside, but ultimately couldn't find what I was looking for. And since I was getting pretty low on health, I decided to visit this biome's Holy Mountain. Unfortunately, I messed up the teleport bolt, which caused the entire thing to crumble. No biggie I thought, since I could just teleport away and avoid the falling debris. But little did I know that it was in fact a biggie. Because for some reason I constantly received damage. I don't exactly know why, I guess it's because I'm in a collapsed Holy Mountain, but since I couldn't do anything about it and my HP was very low to begin with, I died. But I still had my extra life perk, so yeah, that's that. No more safety net, I guess. And since there weren't any useful spells here either, it was time to move on to the next floor. At this point, I was so fed up with the endless digging that I just used the earthquake spell to get rid of the ceiling. I still had to manually dig the last few meters, but that was by far the quickest ascent yet. The first enemies I encountered were those giant spiders, and by the looks of it, they are immune to my rocks. And after making my way back up after falling into the portal, I decided to ignore them and just continue my search for something useful. After some time exploring and leaving behind multiple ones I had no use for, I managed to find one with a spell attached to it which made my projectiles bounce. Now that's not gonna help me get through the lava lake, but after some tinkering and fiddling around, I finally managed to find a way to heal myself by making the healing bolts bounce off a wall. Funnily enough, I think that's my very first time I've ever healed myself with something other than the hearts in the Holy Mountains. I then went on to explore the rest of the cave, but could only find damage spells and more enemies to definitely not kill. At this point I really began to doubt if there actually were any wands or spells available in this seed that would help me with my problem. But as I entered this biome's Holy Mountain and looked at the spells in the shop, I found it. The solution to all of my problems. The Circle of Water spell. This was just perfect. I was now able to summon a metric fuck ton of water out of nowhere, and thanks to my unlimited spells perk, I could do that as often as I liked. I also bought a second luminous drill to finally upgrade my drilling wand, so that I didn't feel like taking a nap every time I had to dig through terrain. After that I healed myself back up and descended once more. The way back down wasn't too eventful, as I already cleared most of the enemies in the biomes. All that was left were the cold, dead remains of my victims, and of course those ghost dudes in the Temple of Art. Back at the boss, it was finally time to completely ignore him and go look for the victory room. As I mentioned earlier, to do that I had to dig through a ton of extremely dense rock, which by the way was a breeze with my upgraded wand, and then make my way through the lava lake. And it was here where things got a bit tricky again. You see, the thing with Circle of Water is that it spawns an absolutely insane amount of water, and since water needs a place where it can go, I carved out a little cave beforehand to, you know, not drown in this tiny little corridor I just made. But as you can see, drowning was still on the table since I had to dive down every time I wanted to dig my way through the now solid lava. The teleport wand really helped me out there. And after 5 minutes of turning the lava into something that looked like the insides of an anthill, I finally found some brickwork. Somewhere in there should be the room I was looking for. Well, as it turned out, the room was either tiny or the brickwork structure huge, because it took me a solid 15 minutes to finally find what I've been looking for. And to my surprise, there even was a little peace sign made out of gold for me to pick up, reassuring me that despite what it might have looked like, I in fact did not kill a single enemy this run. So all that's left to do now is head back to Colmy, pick up the salt and make a run for it. As I was entering the victory room again, Colmy's health bar suddenly appeared at the bottom of the screen. So I waited around for a bit, curious to see if he'd actually chase me all the way here. And sure enough, he did. Which makes me wonder if he would actually follow me forever if I were to just go and explore the world. But that's a question for another video, because I really just wanted to get this run over with. So I completed the work and both me and Colmy just crumbled to dust. And with that, the credits rolled. And it's really hard to believe that I actually did it. It's only my second win in total and it took me nearly 2 hours to finish the run. But nonetheless, I'm proud of myself, even if it's a bit of a shame that I had to look up how to complete a pacifist run. But no chance I would have figured that out on my own. Also, feel free to leave a comment pointing out all the things I could have done better. I learned so much about the game from you guys' comments, so keep them coming. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you've stuck around for this long, why not leave a like or subscribe to the channel if you want to support me. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day. See you in the next one. Bye.